There's a specific sound my mum makes when I suggest spending money on something she considers unnecessary. It's not quite a sigh. It's more like she's releasing air that had been held in her lungs specifically for this moment. A controlled exhale that somehow contains an entire argument. I heard it when I was 9 and asked for Lunchables. I heard it when I was 17 and wanted to go to prom. And I heard it again 3 years ago when I was 27 and mentioned, casually, I thought, that I was thinking about seeing a therapist. Weshem? You have problem? No, Ma, it might be helpful to talk to someone. Another exhale. We don't need that. I didn't go. Not that year. Here's what I've been thinking about lately. There's this idea in behavioral finance called a money script. The term was coined by a financial therapist named Brad Klontz, and the basic concept is this. The beliefs we hold about money aren't random. They get installed in us, usually in childhood, usually through watching the people we grew up with, and then they run quietly in the background for decades, shaping what we buy, what we avoid, what makes us feel safe, what makes us feel guilty. We inherit them the way we inherit a dialect. You don't notice you're speaking it until someone from a different place looks at you funny. My mum's money script, and honestly, most of what I absorbed from her can be summarized in 5 words. We don't need that. It applies to name brand cereal, to birthday parties with cake from 99 Ranch instead of homemade, to car rides that cost money when you could take the bus, to, it turns out, your own mental health. The script doesn't distinguish between a tube of mascara and a plane ticket home to see your grandmother before she dies. The answer is the same shape every time. We don't need that. We can do without. And for a long time, I thought this was just frugality, practical, a sensible response to not having much money, which, in the early years, my parents genuinely didn't have much of. My parents came to the US in 1994. My dad had a graduate stipend that worked out to something like $12,000 a year. My mum waitressed at a dim sum restaurant in the Richmond district. She came home smelling like har-gow and XO sauce, her feet hurting in this particular way where she couldn't fully straighten her toes for the first hour she was home. They shared a 1-bedroom apartment with another couple, family friends from Guangzhou who slept on the other side of a curtain they'd hung from a tension rod. I was born 2 years later. They had $4,000 in savings and no family here who could help, so I understand where it comes from. I really do. When you have $4,000 and a baby and you're in a country where you can't fully read the fine print on anything, we don't need that is not a money script. It's a survival strategy. It's the correct response. You run the household on the tightest possible margin, you put away whatever you can, you do not waste anything, you do not risk anything that isn't absolutely necessary. The problem, and this is the thing that took me years to see, is that the strategy doesn't update. The financial situation changes, but the script doesn't. My parents, by the time I was in middle school, were doing okay. My dad had his PhD, a job at a research firm in Foster City. My mum had moved from the restaurant to doing medical billing from home. They owned a house, a small one, in Daly City, where you could hear your neighbours through the walls, but they owned it. The $4,000 emergency had passed. The curtain across the bedroom was gone. But we don't need that stayed. I remember one specific dinner. I must have been around 12. I'd been invited to a birthday party at one of those places. You know the kind, where you bowl and eat bad pizza, and the whole thing costs the birthday kid's parents probably $400. And I asked my mum to buy a gift. We were at the kitchen table eating leftover rice porridge with pork floss and preserved egg, which I actually loved, but that's beside the point. I told her the party was at this place in Serramonte, that Maya's mum said we could bring a gift from her wish list, that I'd already looked it up, and the cheapest thing was a book set for $15. My mum looked at the table for a moment. Not at me, at the table. You can give her something from home. We have things. I did not give her something from home. I scraped together the $15 from birthday money I'd been saving in a Hello Kitty tin under my bed, and I bought the book set myself, and I didn't tell my mum. I felt weirdly like I had stolen something, even though it was my own money. That's the thing about a powerful enough money script. It can make you feel like transgression, even when you're not doing anything wrong. This is what Brad Klontz would call a money avoidance script. The specific subtype is called money vigilance. This belief that money is something to be watched, guarded, never spent frivolously, always at risk of disappearing. People with high money vigilance tend to save more than average. They're less likely to carry credit card debt. They often look fine on paper, but they also tend to feel anxious about spending even when they can afford something. They have trouble enjoying purchases after they make them. They feel guilt that doesn't quite have a logical source. You buy a new coat, a practical one, on sale. You wear it for the first time, and part of your brain is somewhere else, doing a calculation that has no end point. Sound familiar? For me, the vigilance showed up in strange places. I had a good job. I was 25, working as a project manager, making $78,000 a year in San Francisco, which, yes, is not as much as it sounds, but it was more than my parents had made combined for most of my childhood. And I was still eating rice with whatever was cheapest at the grocery store. Still turning off the lights every time I left a room because I could hear my dad's voice in my head if I didn't. Still, at 25, feeling a small but distinct squeeze of anxiety every time I clicked confirm purchase on anything that wasn't strictly food or rent. The word need had become very small in my life. Need was rent. Need was the one pair of work shoes I'd bought 3 years ago that was starting to separate at the sole. Everything else was somewhere in the murky category of want, and want felt like a moral failing. I couldn't have told you where that feeling came from. It felt like mine, like it had always been mine, like I'd been born with this particular tightness around spending, this reflexive flinch. It took me a long time to understand that I hadn't been born with it. I had learned it from the exhale, from the table, from 15 years of we don't need that delivered in a tone that was never cruel. My mum wasn't trying to hurt me, she was trying to protect me, but that landed over and over until it became the voice in my own head. The therapist I eventually saw. I finally went when I was 28, paid for it myself, did not tell my mum for 6 months. She asked me this question in our second session that I still think about. She said, "When you imagine spending money on yourself, where do you feel it in your body?" I thought she was being a little woo-woo, honestly, but I tried it. I closed my eyes and I thought about buying myself something. I pictured a specific thing, a jacket I'd been looking at for 2 months, $120, from a brand that makes basics that last, and I noticed. There was something in my chest, not quite anxiety, not quite guilt, somewhere between the two, like standing at the edge of something. She nodded like I'd said something she already knew. "That's not a financial response," she said. "That's a nervous system response. And that's the distinction I want to stay with for a second, because it matters. There's a difference between a financial decision and a money response. A financial decision uses information. What's my income? What are my expenses? Can I afford this? Does this align with my goals? A money response bypasses all of that. It fires from somewhere older, somewhere that formed before you had income or expenses or goals, somewhere that only knows. Money is dangerous. Money disappears. Spending means something could go wrong. My mum's "we don't need," that was a money response, not a financial decision. By the time I was in middle school asking about a $15 gift, she had the $15. The math wasn't the problem, but the script was still running, and the script didn't know the math had changed. And then, here's the part that took my breath away when I first understood it. The script had moved. It had migrated. From her into me. I was running her 1996 financial reality on my 2023 bank account. I was making choices for a scarcity that no longer existed. The money had changed. The story about the money had not. So I sat with that for a while. Just let it land. Because the thing about realizing your money scripts came from someone else is that it gets complicated fast. You're relieved. Oh, this isn't actually me. And then almost immediately you feel something else. Something that looks a little like grief. And maybe something that looks a little like anger. I had to be careful with the anger part. Because my parents didn't hand me a broken relationship with money the way you'd hand someone a broken thing. They handed me the thing that kept them alive. Let me tell you what I actually know about my mum in 1996. She had been in the US for maybe 3 years. Her English was functional but not comfortable. She could get through a grocery store transaction, couldn't negotiate a lease. She was working 2 jobs, one of them in a restaurant kitchen where she was on her feet from 4 in the afternoon until 1 in the morning. She sent money back to her parents in Fujian every month. Not a percentage. A specific number she and my uncle had agreed on, $200, which was real money then, which meant real sacrifice now. The apartment she shared with my dad had a kitchen table they found on the street and 4 chairs that didn't match. They ate congee 4 times a week because rice stretches. The fear she was living inside wasn't abstract. It had a dollar amount. It had a due date. So when she said we don't need that, she wasn't being withholding. She was being accurate. She was reporting the truth of her situation with a precision that made complete sense. And then she kept reporting it. Long after the situation changed. Long after the restaurant job ended and the better job started and the apartment got replaced by the house in Fremont. The report didn't update. Reports like that don't update automatically. Someone has to go in and change them. She never got to do that. No one taught her how. There was no one in her life saying, hey, the scarcity response saved you, but you can put it down now. There was no therapy. There was no financial advisor sitting across from her asking about her relationship with money. She had a tax preparer at H&R Block on Murray Avenue, and that was about it. I'm not saying this to make excuses. I'm saying it because I spent a long time being frustrated at a woman who was doing her absolute best with the tools she had. And the tools were survival tools. They're not wrong. They're just not made for this version of the life. The version where I have a 401k match and I'm not using all of it. That was the thing that finally made me actually move. Not the realization about the money scripts. Understanding something doesn't automatically change your behavior. I wish it worked that way. What made me move was a specific number. My company matches 4% of my salary. I was contributing 3%. That gap, that 1%, was just sitting there. Money that was mine, that my employer would hand me, that I was leaving on the table because some part of me felt like it was irresponsible to put money somewhere I couldn't see it immediately. That's the script talking. The script doesn't trust accounts, it can't check at 11 p.m. The script wants cash where you can feel it. I bumped my contribution to 6% on a Tuesday. I remember because I almost talked myself out of it 3 times before I hit confirm. The first time I almost talked myself out of it, I thought about my car registration. The car registration was fine. There was no actual conflict. But the script generated a car registration concern out of nowhere, just to create friction. The second time I thought, what if something happens? What if I need this? I sat with that one longer. Because it's not irrational. Emergencies happen, I know that. But I also had an emergency fund. The concern didn't match the actual conditions of my life. The third time, I just hit confirm before I could think too hard. The 401k was the first thing. The second thing was the Roth IRA. I'd been meaning to open one since my first job. Meaning to. 3 years of meaning to. The mechanics are genuinely a little confusing if no one in your family ever had one. You have to open the account first, then fund it, then actually choose what to invest in. And if you stop after step 2, you have money sitting in cash inside a retirement account doing basically nothing, which I almost did. I picked a target date fund because I needed to just choose something and stop second guessing. 2055. Done. I set up an automatic transfer of $200 a month, which felt like a completely reckless amount of money to move, until I looked at my actual budget and saw that it wasn't. That's the other thing the script does. It makes amounts feel larger than they are. It inflates the perceived cost of things. $15 felt like a lot to ask for in middle school, not because $15 was a lot, but because the script put a story around the ask. The script said, "This request is dangerous. This request might break something." And I had internalized that so thoroughly that I was doing it to myself at 28. Asking myself if $200 a month was reckless, adding extra weight to the question that the number alone didn't warrant. My dad had a different script. His was more performance-based, maybe. Where my mum's was about scarcity, his was about not wanting to seem like he needed help. He would not ask for a better price. He would not call to dispute a charge. One time I watched him pay a fee on his credit card that he didn't owe because calling felt like admitting something. I spent 2 months helping him build his credit score after that, because the fee had bumped his utilization up on a card he barely used. We got the charge reversed eventually. It took 1 phone call. He sat next to me the whole time, looking vaguely like I was doing something slightly wrong. "Americans complain a lot," he said, when it was done. I thought about that for a second. "You're an American," I said. He didn't answer, but he wasn't annoyed. He was thinking about it. There's a version of the filial piety story where the kids pull away and create distance to protect themselves. And I understand that impulse. I'm not judging anyone who needed to do that. But that wasn't what I wanted. What I wanted was to help my parents update the reports too, the same way I was updating mine. My mum has a HYSA now, high yield savings account, where she keeps the money she used to keep in an envelope in the kitchen drawer. She asked me 3 times if it was safe. I explained FDIC insurance to her 3 times in Mandarin, slightly differently each time until something clicked. The money makes about 4.8% interest now instead of 0. She checks the balance every morning. I think she likes it actually. I think the visible number going up every day is hitting something in her brain in a better direction. The envelope money was about control. Watching it grow is also about control. But one of those has a future and one of them doesn't. I still catch myself. Last month I wanted to buy a desk chair. My back has been genuinely bad. This is a medical issue at this point. And I spent 2 weeks deciding. 2 weeks on a desk chair. I kept opening the page and closing it. I built this whole internal justification structure before I finally bought it, and the chair cost $180, and I absolutely have $180. The script ran anyway. It's not gone. I don't know if it ever goes completely away. I think maybe the goal isn't to silence it permanently. I think the goal is to know its voice when it starts talking, and then to talk back. The thing I want to say to whoever's watching this, the person who paused when I said we don't need that because someone in your family said it the exact same way, with that exact same tone, is that the script was rational once. It made sense where it came from. Your parents weren't trying to wire you for anxiety or guilt or a complicated relationship with wanting things. They were surviving. The script was the survival. You don't have to be angry at them for it, and you don't have to keep running it. Those two things can be true at the same time. That's actually where the work starts. Not at the 401k, not at the Roth IRA, not at the budget spreadsheet, though all of those matter. It starts at the place where you can hold the script with some compassion and still say, "This one isn't mine anymore. I'm writing something different now. I'm still writing it, honestly." The desk chair is very comfortable. My back is a little better. My mum called me yesterday to tell me her I say balance, and she sounded proud, and I thought, yeah, okay, something is shifting. If this hit close to home, you're not alone, and you're not stuck repeating it. Subscribe for more stories about money, family, and the quiet patterns that shape how we live. See you in the next one.